What is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of the Kielpro Dynasty Show. I'm your host, Caleb, and today we have a free agency signing special. So, there's been a ton of news coming in the past couple days. We have plenty to cover, and joining me this week, we have another special guest, a Web.com Dynasty champion, a veteran of Dynasty fantasy football with almost a decade of experience. It is Dan Kleinhans. How are we doing, Dan?
Oh, we are doing good. Been an exciting day here in the football world. Can't wait to talk some football.
Yeah, it started off a little slow. I set an alarm to wake up early, but this afternoon has just been insane. It's been tough to keep up with it, and definitely gonna be another 2 podcast week for you guys. So look forward to the next one. But let's hop right into it. Right to start, we got a shocking story. Aaron Jones returning to the Packers, 4 years, $48 million deal. As a Packers fan, I'm conflicted. I mean, I love Aaron Jones, but I'm also starkly against paying running backs that second contract. So there's a lot to unpack here. What are your thoughts on this move?
I think most of us Packer fans feel the same way. It's kind of that really not sure how to feel about it. Love Aaron Jones, love the player. I think for a lot of us, the big thing is we would have been fine with this move if we hadn't have spent that second round pick on
Yeah,
AJ Dillon in last year's draft. It's like Aaron Jones, fantastic player. Like I think he brings a lot of that Elvin Kamara receiving ability. Honestly, like close to that same caliber of player, and not a lot of people blinked when Kamara got like that 5 year, $75 million deal.
yeah.
I don't even think it's a bad price for Aaron. It's just context, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad deal. 4 years, 48 million. I don't mind that. Like I said, I'm against it, but this is a big kick in the nuts to AJ Dillon owners, and this is a guy we were talking last week is probably a hold. You'd probably have to give up a first round pick for him. Now he probably drops a whole round in value. And what are your thoughts with AJ Dillon now?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to really think about. I mean, potentially a buy low, but it's really hard to think about even making a move for him. I mean, they really just committed to Aaron Jones. I mean, he'll have a role. You could pay a late second for him, and I wouldn't hate it, but I don't think that's what you were hoping to get out of him when you drafted him. He'll get that Jamal Williams role. Like I think we're all going to be really sad to see Jamal go, but that writing's kind of on the wall with this deal. Um,
Yeah, that
you
was
know,
that was the really sad part for me because I we're all big Jamal Williams fans, and not as necessarily as a fantasy player, but just as a good team guy. I'm interested to see where he goes. Do you think he could be like a solid committee back somewhere, or is it we're looking at the same production somewhere else probably?
I'd say same production somewhere else, unless he really finds himself in a, say the Falcons pick him up for cheap
Ooh.
and don't end up drafting anyone. But could be a nice little cheap signing there. We'll really just have to wait and see on the landing spot, though.
Yep. So a lot of change. Well, not really change in Green Bay, but Aaron Jones, his value probably around the same where it was before. So on to the next running back. We have a deal, one a little less exciting. Mark Ingram, 1 year deal with Houston. And honestly, I think he's pretty much finished. Went from a top 12 scoring guy in 2019 to outside the top 70, the fewest yards per carry he's had since his rookie season. Anything with Mark Ingram in Houston?
I think we can move on.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Matt Milano, 4 year deal with the Buffalo Bills, linebacker. And this is a guy who is solid when healthy. He has a few 100 tackle seasons when he's healthy. I saw some takes that people thought Milano might have a better season than Edmonds in 2021. Is that just clickbait, or is there maybe something there?
I mean, I think they're two really good, pretty different players. I mean, I think they really complement each other well in that kind of linebacker group for the Bills. Milano is like one of the best in coverage. Like he's up in that Fred Werner coverage territory. I know that's lofty praise, but like he's a great player there. For fantasy purposes, IDP purposes, I mean, I see him as a solid linebacker too. I don't think he'll get into that linebacker one range, but he'd be a guy I'd be fine having as like that second or third linebacker. I'd be pretty excited to have him there.
Yeah, I don't think it would cost you too much. I feel like this guy has been sort of been flying under the radar, especially with his injuries. So might be kind of cheap to go pick up. And with Edmonds, I mean, he's still only 22 years old, which is crazy entering year 3 now, but or is it year 4 now?
It'll be year 4.
God, year 4. That's crazy. He's still only 22, but we have seen points regression in IDP each season, and this season no forced fumbles or interceptions, and just 4 tackles for losses in 15 games. So he still has decent tackle numbers, but is there any room for maybe a little worry that Edmonds maybe isn't hitting that ceiling that we all thought? I mean, there's still plenty of time with how young he is, but the regression is notable.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of room. I don't even want to say worry. Like we might just have to adjust our expectations for a guy like Tremaine. Like, he came in as like this 19-year-old getting drafted in the mid first, and we had really high expectations. He just might be a linebacker too. Like, I don't think that's anything to hate. Maybe it is if you spend an early second or a first round pick on him in a rookie draft. But I think we might just be kind of seeing what he is. At 22 years old, yeah, there's room for improvement, but he's been in the league 3 years now. The lack of big play is a little bit concerning, but those tackle numbers are there. Solid player to roster, but I don't think we're going to see like that Devin White, young superstar out of him at this point.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you there. I think he'll still be a really good producer, and if we don't see that jump with those impact plays this season, I'm not sure we're really ever going to see it. So on to the next one. Cam Newton, 1-year deal with the Pats. Last year was not good for him. He was the 16th highest scoring quarterback, 8 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. But we'll get into what the Patriots are doing here. They're putting a lot of weapons around him. He's still just 31. Do we have a chance for a bounce back season for Cam coming up this season?
I mean, I'm gonna say possibly. That 8 to 10 touchdown ratio you throw out, I think is a little misleading just because of all the red zone rushing attempts. He had 12 rushing touchdowns last year.
That is impressive. Yeah, that kind of makes up for it.
Right. You're actually looking at like that 20 to 10 touchdown ratio, which feels a lot more friendly. I mean, he started the year really strong, then dealt with a few injuries and COVID and just, didn't really look that great down the stretch. When the Tom Brady left the Pats in 2020, he was coming off of a rough year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, people were starting to question how much he had left in the tank, and part of that was those weapons on the Patriots, and they only got worse for Cam.
Yeah, that's
true. He was put in a really tough scenario to succeed last year. I have some hope. I don't think the deal they gave him really ties him into that starting role. I could see them still looking to make a move for a young quarterback, but I think there's a chance.
Yeah, you brought up like you still have the rushing production, and if they're improving these weapons here, I think he's probably a guy who's just been sitting on your bench for a little bit. He might have starter upside this season, so I'm not sure if I'm going out and buying him, but Cam Newton definitely could finally come back to being a value in Dynasty next season. Then to another quarterback, speaking of Tom Brady, 1-year extension with the Bucs. What a season for him. Finished as QB7, the most passing touchdowns of his career with 40. This is good news for Bucs pass catchers, and you just like, will he ever slow down? Is it coming this season, or you just gotta expect that it's going to be more of the same?
I mean, at this point, it's really hard to expect or anticipate a slowdown. I mean, his game just like he's such a chameleon. Like everyone thought going to, and I'll get you'll get at what I'm trying to say with that in a second. Everyone thought when he was kind of in those last few years in New England, like we're starting to become like this dink and dunk specialist. We're going to go to Tampa, and Chris Godwin's going to get a ton of targets. We're worried about Mike and those downfield targets. But then you put him in an offense with those weapons, and he's out here slinging the ball like it's 2007, chucking up bombs to Mike Evans like he's Randy Moss. And it's just the talent around him and the way he was kind of cooking this year. He missed some passes, but man, he still can sling it. So it's really hard to anticipate him slowing down.
Yeah, the downfield throwing slander that he had in New England towards the end there, that kind of changed a little bit this year. There were still some misses. You could see some blatant ones, but for the most part, I mean, he being on that team that, won a Super Bowl and has so many assets around him. This is just the perfect scenario for him. And the Buccaneers have done a great job making it the perfect situation for Tom Brady to be successful. So yeah, I'd have to say another top 10 quarterback season in the future with him. All right, next, a smaller one here. Christian Kirksey, 1-year deal with the Texans. Again, he got hurt this season, sort of in the story of the past few years. He didn't flash a ton with the Packers and what would have been a very nice role to be in. He could maybe have a nice role with the Texans. McKinney, we'll talk about that trade later, and Tyrell Adams is possibly gone as a free agent. So if those two guys are gone, that may put him in a situation to put up points. You got any thoughts on Christian Kirksey?
I mean, I'm pretty much all the way out on Christian Kirksey at this point. I had some hope when he came to the Packers last year. He's played 20 games in the last 3 years. That's tough to really feel good about rostering when you haven't seen the production. You said he didn't flash much with the Packers, and honestly, I think that was generous. He played 11 games last year. You could have told me he played in 4, and I would have believed you. That's how
Yeah.
little impact I felt like he had. So I'm pretty much out on Kirksey. If you want to take a shot as like a flyer, a linebacker 3 or 4, go for it. But I'm not really looking to buy.
Yeah, and a 1-year deal, kind of indicative of the injuries. I don't think anyone really wants to invest into him, but I just think we saw what Tyrell Adams did in that role next to Zach Cunningham. So if he leaves, I think there's still you could put up some points in that position. But yeah, I don't really believe in the talent that much anymore. Okay, wild one here, sort of. Taysom here, hell, 4 years, 140 million. A little misleading because I believe some of those pretty much every year is voidable. Obviously, this comes with the Drew Brees retirement, and I'm also hearing that Jameis could likely be the starter. What is going on in New Orleans? What are we thinking with this
Oh
Taysom
Christ,
Hill
what is going
situation?
on in New Orleans? I mean, I think I can speak for everyone when I say that just the shock of seeing Taysom Hill in a tweet with the words 4 year, $140 million deal. Like my understanding is he'll be lucky to see like 10 million of that this year, and then it's going to be, a new deal with the rest of those years being voidable. But I mean, I don't, I don't see how you roll into the year with Taysom as your starting quarterback. I mean, he had some nice games for the Saints, and Sean Payton, got creative with him, but I don't see that being sustainable over a couple of or over a full year schedule.
Yeah, I don't either. I'd be selling Taysom Hill if you can. Um, would you maybe be trying to buy Jameis? I'd much rather see him running that offense than Taysom. But do you still believe Jameis has what it takes?
Hey, I just want to see LASIK Jameis. I want to see this
Yes,
man
yes.
not squinting down the field. Like I want to see it. I wouldn't say I'm buying, but like I'm here for it. In it, then I Danielle Hunter's a year
Chase
ago if
Young.
he's healthy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Chase Young was the name I was searching for there. But I think he's right there in that next tier, maybe below like your Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa yet. But after that, he's right there.
Yeah,
Mid to
and
late
he should
second
be.
feels about right for me.
Yeah, so he'd be attainable for that. And I think if you have a hole at your defensive line spot, I'd go and get him for sure. Okay, big one here. As a John Smith guy, love to see it. He's free. I talked about it last week. 4 years, 50 million with the New England Patriots. I There's been people I've seen on Twitter that are kind of conflicted on this. I like it. Bill Belichick gave him a glowing review saying Blackswell runs well, is a good receiver. They played him at tailback. He was good there. He's great after the catch. I love him as a talent. Do you think he's going to see a boost there in New England?
Yeah, I also count me among those that are kind of conflicted. I like to think, yeah, he's free, finally out of that Titans offense where he just really wasn't getting that target share. I could see his target share skyrocketing, but there were 7 games last year where Cam attempted fewer than 20 passes. Like that target
Yeah.
share could skyrocket. He could see 30% of the targets, and he might have the same number of targets.
Yeah, I
So
guess that's true, and it depends. Well, obviously, with where the offense is going, like how this offense is going to change with these new additions, I feel like we're going to see Cam maybe throwing it more. It's tough to say, but I
can't
I
throw it
have to.
less.
Yeah, exactly, and you can't throw it less to him than what was going on in Tennessee. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of those just 2, 3 target games, but I still love his upside. I think I'm still buying if there's people trying to sell him. As a Jonnu Smith owner, what do you think he's running nowadays? Second round pick,
I mean, I
mid
don't even
second?
know if you could sell him for a second, maybe a high second, but I think most owners would probably need a late first to move off of Jonnu. I think the red zone touchdown potential there is just huge. He was touchdown dependent this year, obviously, but I think those touchdowns are still going to be there for him in New England.
Yeah, and they paid him the big bucks. You got to think there's going to be more of a focal point there. Definitely going to be interesting to follow. And if he can break into that top tier of tight ends, he's probably one of these guys that going into next season might have a shot at it. So
I mean, I
it'll
don't
be
know if
interesting.
anyone has a shot to break into that top tier of tight ends, but he can certainly potentially be one
Yeah.
of those guys in that next group.
Next one on the list, we got Matt Judon going to the New England Patriots, another Patriot. They spent a ton today. 4 years, 56 million. And in IDP, he's sort of like how I talked about Bud Dupree last week, where he puts up solid numbers, but at least in the leagues I play in, he only has linebacker eligibility, and he doesn't have that tackle floor to really lean on. So if he gets defensive line eligibility in sleeper, he could be a solid producer for you. But otherwise, he's kind of just been off my radar. What about you?
Yeah, probably still off my radar. Maybe in like some deeper IDP leagues, if you're starting like 3 or 4 defensive linemen, I do think he'll get that defensive lineman tag, being in New England. But just kind of one of those perennial like 5 to 8 sack guys might put up decent tackle numbers. Kind of just feels like a really big Patriots defensive line signing. Those guys are always just kind of like quiet, steady producers, do their jobs, go about their business, but not really anything huge for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's going to make a good impact there with New England. We've seen guys leave the Ravens before and be productive, so might be another one of those guys. And I guess I'll just go on to the next one that's leaving the Baltimore Ravens, and that's Yannick Ngakoue, defensive lineman. A 2 year, $26 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's interesting. He's already on his third team, and he's put up at least 8 sacks each year through his career. But what are your thoughts on Yannick? He's already been bouncing from team to team. Do you still believe in the talent with him, or is he kind of just falling off a little bit?
No, I'm a huge fan of the talent. I think kind of the opposite of Judon. I could really see this one having a pretty significant fantasy impact. I think this is a heck of a deal for the Raiders, honestly. 2 years, 26 mil, 13 mil a year for one of the probably the premier edge rusher, in my opinion, available here, this side of Shaq Barrett. But he's 25. He's put up eight. Yeah, I think he has 4 8 sack seasons, maybe 5 8 sack seasons. He had a weird last couple of years with like the whole mass exodus from Jacksonville thing,
Yeah.
the whole Vikings and them trading for him and then trading him within like a couple of months, and then the Ravens. For him to put up 8 sacks last year and like some decent numbers was honestly pretty impressive from last year.
Yeah, I misspoke. That's now his fourth team. So impressive for a guy who's only 25 years old to be on that many teams. I don't know what to think of Ngakwe. When I owned him in a league last year, the problem with him, he scored 5 or less points in 9 out of the 15 games last season, had just 23 tackles, so he was averaging just over a tackle a game, barely. So he has a very low floor when he isn't making those plays, and maybe worries me that teams are willing to move on from him so much. So I'm a little bit wary with Yannick, but I feel like this is a good situation to get back on track and maybe be a little more consistent with the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, RIP for anyone who had hope for Cleveland Farrell yet. I think the writing's kind of on the wall with this one.
Yeah, are
Um,
you thinking Farrell done? What about Crosby? Who do you think is going to be lining up on the other side of him? Is it still going to be Crosby?
I mean, it'll be a little bit of both. They'll all get in that rotation, but it's hard to really get excited about Cleveland Farrell if anyone was still holding out hope. A guy like Yannick, I mean, I don't know. I really love the talent. I wouldn't want him as my D-line one. I just
No.
think it's kind of scary from not necessarily even an on-field perspective, but just everything that's been going on with him off the field. But if I had him as a D-line too, I'd be pretty excited about the upside going forward.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I still wouldn't feel great with him in one of my starting defensive line spots. I gotta wait and see how it starts out here, but definitely if you have him, this is a nice boost for his valuable leaving Baltimore and going to Vegas.
For sure.
Okay, on to another Patriots one. We'll pair up these two wide receivers to New England. We got Nelson Aguilar on a 2-year deal and Kendrick Bourne. So first off, Aguilar had a career resurgence in Vegas. He had career highs in yards, touchdowns, and averaged almost I think over 18 yards a catch. So it was interesting to see him leave Vegas. Do you think this is a better spot for him? I'm not exactly sure.
No, I really
Yeah.
don't. I mean, we just talked about the limited, targets available in New England with Cam at quarterback. Guy like Aguilar, yeah, he had the career year, still only like 900 yards,
Yeah.
still not fantasy relevant. I don't see that getting much better.
Yeah. I would have liked him to stay in Vegas another year to maybe see if he could build off that. He was at times he could be a flex play just with his big playability, but now in New England, I think he'll be a good fit for that team. It'll really help them out, but for fantasy, I think this kind of hurts him.
I agree. I think this is a better real life football signing than it is. He'll do more for the Patriots than he will for your fantasy team. I do just want to point out they paid him 2 years, $26 million.
Yep.
That is the exact same amount as the last guy we talked about, Yannick Ngakoue. We're talking
Wow.
really like highly respected edge rusher from a talent perspective, and washout like seventh year wide receiver who happened to have like 8 or 900 yards last year. Same
Yep.
contract.
Interesting to see how the NFL values these guys, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that's very interesting.
I think we're seeing these big name wide receivers kind of quiet today. I think we are going to
Oh,
see some numbers there.
gonna be massive paydays. I cannot imagine what they're gonna be getting. We'll talk about that on the next episode. But also, they got Kendrick Bourne, showed some flashes in San Fran. Any expectations there?
I don't have expectations for any of these Patriots wide receivers. It's such a messy group right now. Like how I don't know how they're going to roster all these guys. You got Aguilar, you got Bourne, you got Edelman around, you got N'Keal Harry, you got Jacoby Myers, and I just have no idea how those targets are going to shake out.
Yeah, I was gonna say this feels like probably the death of N'Keal Harry. We talked about him last week. Do you have any hope left with him?
I mean, if Kendrick Bourne being signed has you thinking that that's the end of N'Keal Harry, then I think that tells you all you need to know about N'Keal Harry, his play over the last couple of years.
Yeah, And also Jacoby Myers, I mean, he was decently productive this season. I mean, they didn't really have anyone else to throw to. I saw some Patriots guys thinking could be a good piece going forward, but now that kind of muddies the waters with that either. I wouldn't really want to own any of these Patriots receivers right now, would you?
No, I'm pretty much out. There might be some value to be found, some spot production, but I'm out as far as any significant dynasty assets go.
Okay, yeah. All right, on to a former Patriot that is up with a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rob Gronkowski. I mean, what a season for him last year. I know a lot of people wrote him off. I kind of did. I definitely did. And he finished as a top 10 tight end last season and did it without getting hurt. Played 16 games for the first time since 2011. He got 6 or more targets in half of the games this season. Do you think Gronkowski could still put up some solid numbers next season?
I mean, we're looking at just a complete tight end wasteland after these first couple guys. If you're a contending team with a big hole at tight end, honestly, of those kind of tail end tight end ones, Gronk might be one of your safest options next year.
Yeah, that's definitely he's more of a high floor guy that, might not have big weeks for you, but definitely a guy you can still have on your roster and start when you need him. And if, like you said, if you don't have one of those top guys, you're grasping for straws anyways. And with Brady back there, pretty much everyone back in that offense, I don't see why he couldn't have another solid season.
Yeah, like if I'm a contender and I'm going into the season with a tight end like, young tight end like Irv Smith or somebody like that, who I have some expectations for, but we just haven't really seen it yet, Gronk might be a guy I'm looking to acquire for relatively cheap.
Yeah, I like that sort of a bridge tight end for your guys on a team. Okay, next one, Leonard Floyd getting a big contract with the Rams, 4 years, 64 million. This is another guy that would have more value if he had defensive line eligibility. He had a career high 10 and a half sacks this season. What do you think of Leonard Floyd?
I thought that was a hell of a contract for Leonard Floyd, seeing the price on some of these other edge rushers.
Especially on a team that seems like they've been dealing with cap issues this whole time.
Yeah, I don't know how they really pulled this one off. Feels like, I guess I haven't seen the guaranteed numbers, but this is like 16 million a year for a guy who's really had one real solid year of production. Feels just a little bit risky to me.
Yeah, and I believe he's available in our league in Web. This doesn't really change that. If he got different eligibility, maybe, but for IDP terms, he's kind of still off the radar.
Yeah, I would say this is probably one of the worst spots for him. He probably keeps that linebacker eligibility.
All right, on to another one. Carlos Hyde, 2 year, $6 million deal with the Jaguars. Obviously, this is less about Carlos Hyde than it is James Robinson, but I feel like this might be kind of a win for James Robinson owners. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a chance that this is one of the biggest kind of signings from the as far as the implications for fantasy go, at least from the offensive position. Um, this signing right now is looking like best case scenario for James Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. And like Carlos Hyde, 30 years old, he dealt with injuries on the Seahawks. He does have the connection with Urban Meyer from way back when, but I just don't see him taking over more than 20% of that backfield, possibly. So this kind of, Frazier talked about it last week, where you're just going to be kind of dodging bullets the rest of this offseason. You dodged one here. Now we just need to make it to the draft, and if we get through that without them investing maybe with a running back in the first 4 rounds, James Robinson owners might be feeling pretty good going into next season.
Yeah, and I think if you are one of those James Robinson owners that's just really loves the player and wants to hold on to him, you're thrilled to hear this. I think if you're one of those owners that's kind of been looking for a window to sell, this might be that window. I think
Yeah,
you're going to have a lot of people that are thinking, dodge the bullet, but
yeah,
we haven't been through the
definitely.
draft yet.
This could open a slight another sell window for him, and it's sort of how it's been. So there's been ample opportunities to try and get on James Robbins if you want to. Here's another one. But yeah, I think if this all stays the same, you could see him putting up RB2 kind of numbers next year in Jacksonville. Obviously,
So easy.
they'll probably have Trevor Lawrence in town, so that helps too. So Yeah, definitely good news for James Robinson owners. All right, last signing here. We've got John Johnson, defensive back, getting a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Cleveland Browns. He's an interesting player. He was one of the top DB guys a few years ago. He's got over 100 tackles in two of the last few years, and he was hurt in 2019. What do you think of John Johnson going to Cleveland?
I love this signing for John Johnson and the Browns. I'm always a little leery of these guys that have been leaving. Oh God, I almost said St. Louis. Where are they?
Um, Los Angeles?
Los Angeles.
Is that right?
Yeah, always kind of wary of those guys that are leaving there. We've seen some of that not work out with like your Corey Littleton, some of those other guys. But I love the signing. I think they got him for a pretty good price. Do have some questions about kind of how he impacts some of the guys that are already there. They do still have like Ronnie Harrison under contract. They just drafted Grant Delpit in the second round, so kind of curious about how all those guys are going to kind of fit in the same secondary.
Yeah, we've sort of talked about it before. When defensive guys like a DB gets traded somewhere, it sort of opens some question marks because you just don't know how exactly they're going to fit into a defense. And you brought up some good points with guys like Ronnie Harrison and Grant Delpit. Grant Delpit probably going to be in the future plans for that team. Ronnie Harrison had some good numbers when he wasn't hurt, so you got to think they're going to be on a 3-year deal. You got to think they're going to be using him a decent amount. I think we could see the same sort of numbers he put up in LA, but it's a little up in the air still. I don't think this was necessarily a hit on his value, but I wouldn't be going out and trying to buy him just because there's a lot of unknown with him switching to the Browns.
Yeah, it's tough to go out and buy those guys that are changing teams, but if I have them, I'm still fairly confident firing them up as a DB1 going into next year. I mean, you got some guys there playing in the safety room, but there's going to be tackle opportunities. That linebacker room might be the worst in the league. Not a single impact player in that room. Those opportunities are going to be there for him.
Yeah, he'll have a chance to lead that defense. I know he's calling plays for the Rams there, so I think it's a great fit, like you said, for the Browns. And if it turns out in fantasy, it could even be a boost if he gets that sort of role in that defense to be a playmaker. So, yeah, John Johnson, interesting sign with the Cleveland Browns. All right, we do have one trade that went down over the last few days, and that is between the Houston Texans and Miami Dolphins. Bernardrick McKinney to the Dolphins, linebacker, for Shaq Lawson, defensive lineman. Not a huge trade here. McKinney had some solid years in Houston, was never a big impact player, and Shaq Lawson, I think he's averaged like 4 sacks a season, so not a lot with him. Maybe some opportunity in Houston. Any thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, we can. I got a couple. Kind of interesting to see the Dolphins really clearing out that 2020 free agent class already, moving on from Van Noy and Shaq Lawson. So that's kind of interesting to see. I don't have any really expectations for Shaq Lawson. He'll get the opportunity, but I'm just not sure the talent's there for him to really be a viable fantasy or IDP asset. Not a bad player for the Texans to have, but don't see the relevance. As far as McKinney goes, he could find a spot in that Dolphins defense. Like I said, they just moved on from two of their linebackers. Shaq Lawson played a lot of outside linebacker for them last year, and then Kyle Van Noy. He might kind of find a spot in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, I think he could definitely fit that nicely on their defense. He's just a steady kind of guy. You saw it when he was in Houston, and it'll be interesting to see if he affects Jerome Baker at all. I know you're an owner of him and What kind of expectations do you have for Jerome next season? He had a nice
I mean,
finish last season.
they're just two really different players. You got Bernard McKinney out here, 6'3", 260-pound bruiser. And then you got Jerome Baker, who's this like 6 foot, 230-pound kind of run and chase linebacker. I think we'll be all right for the value for both of them. I kind of think they'll complement each other well. Dolphins actually played a lot last year with one linebacker on the field, kind of similar to the Packers. So we did see not really any huge snap numbers out of any of their linebackers. You had
Yeah,
Jerome Baker last year getting 7 sacks.
yeah, I saw that. I think he had 225 less snaps, but he also had all the sack numbers. So I think how they use them, it's a lot of fun. It's very versatile, and yeah, he's an interesting player going into next season. Are you trying to hold on to him and see what happens, or maybe trying to ditch him?
I mean, if I could get him, a late second for him, I'd consider moving on just because I think there are some questions about his role going into next year. I could see them using him more as a pass rusher. I mean, he's kind of a little undersized for that role in a traditional sense, but they really did have him kind of doing that a lot. Um, if he's not kind of having some of those more gap responsibilities of kind of that middle linebacker, allowed to kind of just run and chase a little bit more, I could see this being a potential positive for him, but it's hard to say. Kind of just a lot
Okay.
of uncertainty.
Yeah, I'd agree. All right, on to the rumor mill. We got a few interesting stories here. There's still some free agents out there that are garnering some interest. So we'll start today with Marlon Mack to test free agency, and they should be healthy for training camp. He kind of fell off the map after his injury. He opened up the running back room for Jonathan Taylor, and he took it big time, and he's not going to be giving it back. So is anywhere that you could see Marlon Mack maybe still putting up production that he was doing with Indy for a bit, or what are your thoughts there?
I mean, I guess I kind of feel similar to on him as we kind of talked about Jamal Williams early, maybe in the right spot. Hard to really see a team investing much in him coming off the injury. He's really never been more than just like that solid back. Could maybe find a role somewhere, but I'm not super excited for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's probably a Jamal upside kind of player. He's more of a big play guy. He showed some flashes, but it'll depend where he goes. If like if he went to the Dolphins, maybe that'd be fun. But speaking of the Dolphins, James Conner is getting some interest with the Dolphins, and we talked about him the other week where we were pretty much out on him. If you didn't sell last year or the year before, you're kind of stuck with him. But this is one of those landing spots. If he went to the Dolphins, maybe we could still see him put up decent numbers.
I mean, if he went to the Dolphins, I would mostly be excited for Miles Gaskin. Um,
Wow, yeah, that's fair. It's like the James Robinson Carlos Hyde.
uh, yeah, feel a little bit like that. I mean, I think it'd be a little bit more of a split. But I don't know. It'd be tough to see going into a year with if they do go in with Connor and Gaskin as kind of that, 1A, 1B. I think they really have the ammo, the salary cap space with some of these cuts that they've made, the draft capital that I'd be shocked if they would go into the season with those two guys as their kind of main backs, even if they did sign a James Conner.
Yeah, I feel like it'd just be a weird move for them. I know they've been looking for this feature guy, James Conner. I mean, they would maybe complement each other well, but I just don't know why they'd spend money on a guy like him right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how
Uh,
much it would cost, but it's probably too much.
yeah. All right, John Brown. We talked about him as well last week. He's interested in joining the Colts or the Steelers. Would you like to see him in either of these situations? Do you still think he has some fantasy relevance?
I mean, that's neat that he's interested. I mean, I don't know how interested they will be. He might be a nice sub
Yeah.
and might be a nice spot in Indy, kind of that maybe a cheaper T.Y. Hilton kind of sub in there. He had some decent games with the Bills last year. I'm not super excited from like a fantasy perspective, but I mean, he's got the speed to bring some value to an offense, I suppose.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't want to see him in Pittsburgh. They've already got their deep ball guy with Claypool, and it's sort of Big Ben. It would be interesting. We'll see how Carson Wentz affects the Indy pass catchers, but yeah, I mean, John Brown is what he is. If he goes to the Colts, he might have some flex appeal at times, but it is what it is. Allen Robinson. So we talked about the free Allen Robinson train. He got franchise tag, but now people are saying that he has zero plans to sign his franchise tag, so possibly a sit out here. Well, what are your thoughts on A-Rob maybe sitting out with this franchise tag?
I want to provide my thoughts on the franchise tag, but first I need to ask, is this a PG podcast?
Um, say what you want. I haven't really set the precedent. I don't really swear on it, but I also haven't said anything. Like, go for it.
Okay, I'm
Let
gonna
your
let one
mind.
drop. Fuck the franchise tag.
Wow. What's the take here?
Let the man hit free agency. No one likes getting tagged. No one likes watching the tag get used. I feel like it doesn't serve the purpose it was intended to. It's just this extra year of team control that I don't feel like is necessary. Um, God, I hope this is a Tegan trade because I just don't want to see Allen in Chicago next year.
Yeah, I mean it. Like I said last week, he still gets the targets, but it would just be nice to see him unleashed somewhere. And the Bears are kind of, like you said, the franchise tag is kind of restricting him from doing that. And I mean, he chose to go there when he signed that contract, but obviously, right now, he does not feel the same way as he did when he originally signed. So, it's also important to factor in the next rumor mill item that the Bears plan to move on from Mitch Trubisky this offseason. So, I mean, there's been Russ rumors. I mean, they still is Nick Foles under contract. What is
Yeah,
going
he
on?
is. They can't get out of that contract.
Oh
He's
my
got
God.
that deal from that Jags deal.
Oh yeah. So Mitch Trubisky, I've seen maybe some people saying him going to Washington. I don't know. Do you still?
I've seen that he's on the 49ers QB wish list. That's a rumor
Oh,
I've been seeing.
interesting. I would like that better than Jimmy G. I think he'd
I'd
work
be in,
nice in that
I'd
offense.
be intrigued. Mitch has had his moments. I mean, Bears moving on from Mitch Trubisky, like sure, that sounds fine. That doesn't upset me. Well, what's the plan? You don't pick until the late, kind of the late first. You're not probably taking a quarterback there. You just
No.
rolling with Foles? Like, what's the
Oh
plan here?
God. That is a yeah, they're I hope they have some well, I hope they don't have something in place as a Packers fan, but if they went going back and forth with their options of Trubisky and Foles this past season and now they're just gonna try and ride Foles, I mean, I don't know. They're in a tough place. Unless they make the Russ deal, it's just gonna be another year of the same old, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, the Russ rumors are flying right now. Seahawks trade Russ, they're eating like 45 mil on the cap this year to not have Russell Wilson. What do the Bears have to trade for a guy like Russell Wilson? They're just in a really rough quarterback spot, I feel like.
Yeah.
Moving on from Trubisky sounds fine, but I'm not sure what the next best option is.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Last item we've got Corey Davis. It sounds like he will not be returning to the Tennessee Titans. It's been a bit of a lackluster career so far for Corey Davis. I know a lot of people were high on him, me included, but he's never put up a top 25 wide receiver season. This year he almost hit 1,000 yards, which was nice to see, but he just hasn't hit the potential we've been hoping. So I'm kind of glad we get to see a change of scenery here. It depends where he goes, but what are your thoughts on Corey Davis?
I mean, I loved him in the role he was in last year, kind of that like reliable number two guy. Um, Probably not. He's not going to be your alpha number one for a team. I really don't think, but love seeing him in that wide receiver two role, physical
Yeah.
presence, possession receiver. So I'd like to fit somewhere where there's kind of already an alpha.
Okay, fair enough. And it's interesting now that Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis are both going to be out the door. What's left there in Tennessee for them to
Yeah,
work with?
I was going to bring up the same thing. So I'm gonna have a little game for you. Name
Okay.
a player on the Titans that caught passes last year. Go ahead.
Um, Ferkser.
Free agent.
Oh, uh, what was that one guy? There was that fast guy. It wasn't like Raymond.
Yeah,
Was it?
Khalif
Was it
Raymond.
Khalif
Good
Raymond?
job. You just identified their wide receiver two for next year. Adam
Is he really
Humphries.
that?
Heck yeah.
Oh my.
You're looking at a wide receiver depth chart of AJ Brown, Khalif Raymond, Mason Kinsey, Cameron Batson, Cody Hollister, Nick Westbrook, Akeen, Rashard Davis. These are the guys we're talking about after AJ Brown. Tight end room? Oh yeah, that's gonna be much better. We're down Jonnu Smith already. Ferkser's a free agent. Derrick Henry's going to carry the ball 500 times next year.
I did not realize. I didn't really think of that how fast it falls off. I mean, Raymond was fun for a little bit. He had some big plays, but I don't know. This is because they don't really have a lot of money to work with. I don't. Well, they're losing these guys, but yeah, they've been committed to the running of the ball, and unless they make a move in the draft, I mean, I feel like receiver has to be a target for them now.
You got to think so.
So yeah, I mean, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1 season, if he can stay healthy.
70% target share.
This we may set records this season, folks, with targets for A.J. Brown. So A.J. Brown owners are excited to see what this next season entails for him. All right, well, that's the show. We had a lot to cover. We got through it all in under an hour. So thanks for coming on, Dan. You got any last words you want to pop in?
No, it was great being on. Fun day here. We're in for it tomorrow as well. Looks like you'll get the wide receiver special kind of with your next podcast here as those dominoes start to fall. But it's a fun day.
Yeah, it was crazy. Expect the next couple days to be as well. I've already got a guest lined up for Wednesday night, so we should have a pod either Thursday or Friday for you guys to cover those receivers, where they end up going. But yeah, as usual, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you later this week.
Joy, 'cause I'm badass, but I fight temptation.